Hello everybody, welcome back. It's Matt here with another episode of Flag on the Play. This time we are trolloping through the AFC East here. And it's a pretty interesting division, not gonna lie. We're gonna kick things off right away here with Miami Dolphins. Miami Dolphins were actually second overall in the NFL with 131 accepted penalties for 1,206 yards. That also led this division, so I don't know if that's a title they should be very proud of, but it's also a title I was very surprised on. They looked well disciplined, and it was just something I wasn't expecting. But the numbers are right here in front of me. So they were flagged mostly for offensive holding, as we all know, 22 times for 216 yards. And then their second most called play was false start, 15 for 75 yards. So that's not too bad. But what really is frustrating and what really killed them is the unnecessary roughness, because they got called 9 times for 135 yards. And this is something I noticed when I studied Miami's defense. They were a physical defense, but they need to be careful of where their hands are going. Kiko Alonso drew a couple of those flags, being the fact that he's tough and physical, but he has a tendency of throwing players to the ground, and that's not going to help your team. It's not a good sign. So discipline is something that's in order. Other than that, there's not much to say about them. We're going to try to make these flag on the play things really short because our regular things are so long. So yeah, unnecessary roughness is really what hurt them. And surprisingly enough, I know we've seen a pattern with this, but Dewan James, an offensive tackle, is their leading penalty holder. 10 penalties for 91 yards. 7 offensive holding and 2 false starts. These are penalties that just happen to kill a team, and it's not fun, it's not good, it shouldn't be happening, it's not helping your team. Moving right along then to our second place in the division and 12th overall, the Buffalo Bills. 112 accepted penalties for 960 yards. Not too bad, so we're starting to get a little bit more towards the middle of the pack, if you will. And not too shabby. Most of their yardage came off of offensive holding, 24 for 229. And then their second most called penalty was defensive holding, which was called 9 times for 38 yards. So, not too bad. But looking at the numbers here, once again, DPI 5 for 102. That's a killer. But then they had these delay of games. They had 8 of them for 40 yards. Delay of game is a very weird penalty. A lot of people think that it's just because nobody knows what the heck they're doing. But sometimes it's used strategically. What you do is you're trying, it's like 3rd and 3. So what you do is you go with a silent count and you try to draw your opponent off sides. And you don't care about the 5-yard penalty because you're either well within field goal range or you're going to punt it away anyway, so it really doesn't matter. But I just thought it was interesting to see that one in the top 3. Because it's not something you normally should see up there. And then what I thought was amusing was their top penalty person is called unnamed, which means it's just called against something. Like, for instance, there's this, but they had 12 men on the field, defensively and offensively, called 5 times. And that's just, they didn't specify a player, it's just how it happens. There's 12 people on the field, but that's not good, though. 5 times to be called for too many men on the field, that's just a sign of a team that doesn't know what it's doing. Unless you're against, like, Green Bay and Aaron Rodgers, where he's amazing at just catching you off guard when you're not prepared. But what they really need to work on is just coordination. I think there's going to be a lot of changes in Buffalo now with the new head coaching staff and all that. So I look to see those numbers drop. Then we get down to our third-ranked team, the New England Patriots. They were actually 21st overall in the league. Which I thought they'd be a lot lower. They had 104 accepted penalties for 902 yards, which isn't bad. I really thought they would be closer to the bottom of the list, but 21st in the league isn't bad. 30 offensive holding for 292 yards. I thought for sure that would be a lot lower. But then here's the killer. These two penalties, it's an offense and a defensive penalty. So they had 18 false starts for 90 yards, which really surprised me for an offense that seems to run as well-oiled as they were. So that one caught me off guard. I don't know if it caught you off guard. And then what really stood out as a shocker is the 8 DPI called for 148 yards. That's a lot of yards. And I don't understand it. It makes no sense to me. It shouldn't be there. For a team that's supposed to be so well disciplined, this is a really high number in defensive pass interference and false starts. But being the fact that the Patriots kind of do what they want, I don't know how to correct that other than to have somebody yell at them. In terms of player personnel, it was well balanced. Joe Thuney, who was a guard, had 9 penalties for 75 yards, 7 offensive holding, and 3 false starts. Not too bad. But it's just something they got to watch. You know, this is a team that I expect to be very well disciplined, and these penalty numbers kind of surprised me. But what's even more surprising than that is actually last place in the division and 30th overall in penalties with 93 called for 837 yards is actually the Jets. Like I said, that actually took me by almost blindsided me because I was not expecting that. The Jets, as we all know, have really struggled this year. And to see them, third best in terms of penalties, it's really surprising. To nobody's surprise, their top penalties in terms of called were tied between false start, offensive holding for 17 each. With offensive holding taking the most yards at 166. But what really killed them, was defensive pass interference. They had 12 called, for 230 yards, which is freaking ridiculous. That number is almost baffling. Because after that, the next highest number is those offensive holding for 166. I think a lot of that is just due to their defense, and their team as a whole is just aging. It's a very older group. And they can't keep up with them, so they have no choice but to try to just push them out of the way or knock them down, do whatever it takes to get that ball out of their hands. I expect this to slowly improve. But Screen, the defensive back, actually led the team with 8 penalties for 96 yards, 4 defensive holding, and 3 DPI. And surprisingly, the most talked about person, Darrelle Revis, only had 3 penalties for 13 yards. I know he's been in the news in the wake a lot, and it's just been confirmed he's been released from the Jets. Which, if you listen to our Jets episode, I think that's a good move. So that's a quick rundown of this division through its penalties. I hope you guys enjoyed it. The AFC East is now completely finished. Check out Buffalo and the Jets coming up the next couple days. Thank you all for sitting through this. If you look in the description below, you'll see a link to our email. Leave comments, send us questions. Let me know what you think of this show. Also, you'll see our Twitter handle is @2M_football. That is a very key part, is that underscore. And you guys have a wonderful day.